In the final, desperate days of World War II, as the conflict reached its violent crescendo, Japan unleashed a tactic so extreme it stunned the world: the kamikaze. These weren't just pilots, they were human-guided missiles, deliberately crashing their planes into enemy warships. The strategy sent a shockwave of terror through the Allied forces, leaving a deep psychological scar. But it begs the question, why would a nation resort to this? And what was the real impact of this horrifying strategy? The word itself, kamikaze, means divine wind. It's a name that reaches back centuries in Japanese history to legendary typhoons that miraculously saved the islands from Mongol invasion fleets. In 1944, this idea of divine intervention was reborn in a terrifyingly human form. Young pilots were trained for a single purpose: to become that divine wind, to sacrifice their lives by flying planes packed with explosives directly into the steel hulls of enemy ships. The tactic was officially unleashed in October of 1944, a dark new chapter that began during the pivotal Battle of Leyte Gulf in the Philippines. So why the shift to such a desperate measure? You have to understand the situation in late 1944. Japan was on the brink of collapse. Its once mighty navy was in ruins at the bottom of the Pacific. Fuel reserves were nearly gone, and perhaps most critically, its best, most experienced pilots were dead. They were facing an industrial titan in the United States, an enemy that could build ships and planes faster than Japan could sink them. Conventional warfare was no longer an option.
So Japanese military leaders made a chilling calculation. They would trade what they had left, human life, for what they lacked in machines. They believed that this ultimate display of devotion could terrorize the Americans enough to slow their relentless advance and maybe force them to the negotiating table. These attacks weren't isolated incidents. They became a core part of Japan's Pacific strategy. The terrifying peak of this campaign came in 1945 during the bloody Battle of Okinawa. And the numbers are staggering. In total, around 3,800 kamikaze pilots flew to their deaths. Their sacrifice wasn't in vain from a purely tactical perspective. They damaged over 1,300 Allied ships. Around 300 were either sunk outright or so badly crippled they were knocked out of the war. And the human cost for the Allies was immense. Nearly 5,000 American sailors were killed by these suicide attacks alone. So while the kamikaze strategy wouldn't win the war for Japan, the damage it inflicted was terrifyingly real and brutally costly. Imagine being a sailor on the deck of a ship in the Pacific. In a normal air raid, you watch for planes to drop their bombs and turn away. But these planes, they didn't turn away. They just kept coming. This created a unique and intense kind of psychological terror. There was no retreat for the pilot, which meant every attack was a life or death struggle. The sheer unpredictability fueled a constant state of fear and utter exhaustion among the crews. The US Navy adopted, throwing up heavier air patrols, improving radar, and speeding up interception. But even so, the constant threat of the kamikaze slowed down the Allied war machine and relentlessly drove up the human cost of every naval operation. And what about Japan? On the surface, the kamikaze pilots were symbols of absolute loyalty, the ultimate embodiment of sacrifice for the emperor and the nation. But beneath the propaganda was a grim reality. Strategically, the program was a catastrophic drain, bleeding the country of its last generation of young men and trained pilots. After the war, as the dust settled, the perspective shifted. Many Japanese historians came to see the kamikaze not as heroes, but as tragic victims, a heartbreaking consequence of a nation driven to ruin by desperate and failed leadership. To the rest of the world, the kamikaze were simply shocking, an extreme tactic that seemed to defy all logic. It reinforced the image of an enemy driven not by rational strategy, but by a fanatical ideology. Today, our understanding is more complex. We remember the kamikaze as individuals, young men caught in a terrible vortex of duty, culture, and a war that was already lost. Their legacy is not simple. It is a powerful, disturbing, and profoundly human chapter from the Second World War, a stark reminder of the terrible cost of desperation.